All right, and we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just waiting for everybody to start filing in. We're going to take our time moving into things. I have to retweet and post that I'm live, so bear with me while I get into that. But I am curious, where do we have people listening in from? I'm trying to figure out the different groups of people we have listening at different times. I do some of my live streams at like 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then sometimes I do them at 8. And I have a completely different audience both times. So I'm actually kind of curious where you guys are from. Let me just go ahead and say that I am live to my multiple different audiences here. We got Sicily, Portugal, London, Stan, UK, Sweden, New Zealand, Texas. You giant ginger. I'm actually not a ginger. Maybe I am technically, I guess, now, because all I have is red hair on my beard, but my hair on my head was blonde. I was very, very blonde. So Argentina, Norway, Denmark, Sweden. Holy cow. Bunch of Euro bros in here. Slovakia, Serbia. Hello, Wesley. How are you doing? Paris, France. Everybody. I am so happy we have so many people in here. It's so cool that I get to just reach so many different places and cultures and peoples. It's really cool. Retweeting my live stream, and then we will go ahead and get started. Everybody, I hope everybody is doing good on this fabulous Friday. We have not a ton to talk about, but some important things to talk about. So we'll go ahead and get into it here. Cairo, New York, Alabama, Miami. Nice, guys. Nice. All right. First and foremost, before we get into it, let me go ahead and say hello, welcome. Thank you all for being here. If you guys wouldn't mind liking and subscribing if you're new, if you're regular here, you should have already liked and left a comment and done everything you're supposed to do. I mean, come on, guys. What is this? Is this your first day? First time? But no, seriously, I really appreciate you guys so much. Please go into the link in the description on the YouTube channel. On the YouTube video, and go and follow me on my Telegram, my Twitter, and my Patreon. You can follow all of those for free and get access to content there for free. Thank you to all of my Patreon members, and most importantly, my financial supporters on Patreon. You guys are killing it. You guys make my world go round. I appreciate you so much. Be on the lookout for the new episode of Demonetized that should come out later today. And then immediately after this episode, this live stream, I think I have it scheduled for 4 o'clock my time, which is 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 2 hours from now. The daily update will come out, which if you're watching this, you probably don't need to watch that, but more content is more content. So, all right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it, boys. Heading over to the map. Obviously, you guys know of Ukraine, the map that you are all mostly familiar with here. We are going to start in the Kursk salient today. So the Ukrainians, if you remember, this entire area used to be blue. It is no longer entirely blue. It has had a large orange chunk taken out of it, which is now the confirmed Russian-controlled area where the Ukrainians used to be. So eventually this entire thing should be orange, and I will leave it on my map as a former battlefield after it is completed. But the Russians have pushed in. Since our last update, they have crossed the Sagnost River here and captured Dorino and Nikolaevo Dorino, which is a pretty important geographical barrier to cross. And then additionally, so the last update was something like this, just these two villages. And then additionally today, we had an update that the Russians had come out and captured this highway, or this roadway, I should say, and have entered the village of Servdilivkovo. So the Russians are pushing, and with the this advance here, cutting this roadway, this entire northern portion for the Ukrainians is now cut off from logistics. This is a very, very bad thing to happen to the northern portion of this advance. And it brings the Russians much closer to the R200. I have a feeling that the Russians will actually go into the Sumy region here and not just continue along the border. I believe that they will push into the Sumy region and capture the town of Bazivka here, and then cut the R200 actually in the Sumy region, recapturing this checkpoint where the initial battles kicked off, and then cutting off Zdruzda from its supply. This salient is moving rather quickly. The Ukrainians are trying desperately to hold it. They have gone on and tried to pull Russian forces away by attacking Vesele here, Obad, these small towns, but nothing has really come of that. And the Russians are just continuing to push through here. So the Kursk incursion has basically now failed entirely, and now it's being undone almost entirely. So in a rather short period of time as well. All right. Hopefully everybody is hanging on with my pronunciations. I hope everybody's doing good. All right, over to the Kharkov region, we have a small Russian advance into Taki here. This area is actually a little bit of a hill, so the Russians have pushed out onto this hill that looks down onto the Vovocha River here and onto this this string of settlements. Not a major update, but it is something to note that the Russians are again advancing in the Kharkov region. There is also some fighting now inside of this residential area here, just north of Lipsy as well. So the Russians are now beginning to probe out of their original consolidated regions. All right, moving over here to the Kupiansk-Oskol River region. The Russian forces have advanced and captured most. Let me go ahead and change the color of this a little bit. Have crossed the Zhibiets River now in multiple locations and are in control of most of Makivka. This is important because this Zhibiet River sort of bridgehead here for the Ukrainians is supposed to be a very strong defensive area. However, now that the Russians have crossed the Zhibiets River, they could definitely threaten these strong positions like Nevelske, which they are on approach to, as well as Terny and Yempolivka, which have been thorns in the Russian side here, pushing the Ukrainians out of these villages for some time. So not a major advance again, but an important advance. All right, moving down here to the Andrivka-Kleshchevka area. The Ukrainians have retreated from this end of the canal officially, making it now Russian-controlled territory. Everything east of the canal here by Chasiv Yar is now under Russian control, thus undoing all of the 2023 counteroffensive by the Ukrainians in the Bakhmut direction. If you guys remember, during the 2023 counteroffensive, which the majority of the focus was on the Orikhiv sector here and the Velika Novosilka section here, but the Ukrainians also went on the offensive in the Bakhmut region here, and basically pushed the Russians back out of Ivanivsky, away from Ivanivsky, because they were up on this hill. The Wagner had captured that and had pushed the Russians back basically into Kleshchivka on the low ground. That was in the summer/fall of 2023. And then over the last year, basically, the Ukrainians have done everything, fought tooth and nail, to hold their positions across this canal. This high ground is of vital importance. And you can see why, as soon as the Russians push out, they have already crossed the canal and are nearing Stepochki and the important lines of logistics into Toretsk and stuff like that. So this is another important update. Again, puts the Ukrainians on the back foot here now, and the Russians should be poised to start closing in the flanks of Toretsk now that the canal has been met. All right. Moving down into Toretsk, we have another important advance here. Every single one of these advances is rather important, tactically speaking, on the battlefield today. Here in Toretsk, the Russian forces have advanced out of the gas station area here and into the residential high-rise area. You can see there is a stretch of residential high-rise buildings here, very good for defense. But the Russians have now entered that and are quickly approaching the industrial facility, the mining facility, and these Terekons, both from the south as well as from the northwest-ish, sort of. Again, this is the heart right here of the Ukrainian defense of Toretsk. Once this falls, The rest of the city is basically not worth defending for the Ukrainians. So the Russians are now inside of the what would you almost call the citadel of the city, and it will likely be a rather quick advance now that they are in the residential building. Now that they have a foothold, they should be able to move through these buildings rather quick and then put a lot of pressure on this industrial zone in Toretsk. The Battle of Toretsk could accelerate greatly in the coming weeks. Okay, moving over to the Pokrovsk salient now. We do have some advances here south of Seledove and west of Ukrainsk. The Russians have advanced out into these fields and are quickly approaching this former mine. I don't think it is currently a mine anymore. This is one of the terracones, but you can see that it has shrubs and stuff growing on it. So I do believe that this is a closed mining facility, still an industrial facility that has large warehouse buildings and a tactical high ground. So the Russians are advancing in that direction. It also gives them access to this road, which will lead them to Sukrin. And there are reports now that the Russians have actually entered this facility and are in control of it. However, we do not have geolocations for that, so it is left at this tree line and this tree line here. And then today, an additional update came up, so you can kind of see that it was just this portion of the update initially. And now the Russians have captured the entire field area between southern Seledove and northern Ukrainsk, just basically flattening the front line. If you guys can look at this map now, you can see how far the Russians have pushed out from Avdiivka. This front line is massive. This is a massive chunk of territory, a very important chunk of territory, and the Ukrainians still have yet to be able to stabilize, and the Russians are still pushing forward. All right, here we have confirmation that the Russians have advanced into the northern portion of Kharkiv. Again, we talked about it with the Nevelske Pocket. If you guys remember that there was this massive pocket here that the Ukrainians were sitting in for a very long time. It was the original, it was only 2 weeks ago, actually, that I think I posted my original Hot Pocket titled video. As you can tell by the title of this video, it is Hot Pocket 2.0, because what has happened for the Ukrainians is they retreated from this much bigger pocket over here and have come back to their next line of defense. But unfortunately for the Ukrainians, the line of defense has been completely compromised up here in Ukrainsk. It has also been compromised down here to the south in the penal colony now and Hrostre. You can see that the logistics lines, actually, I'll bring up a photo that I posted earlier to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Why explain it to you when I can just show you exactly what I mean. Here we go. Okay, so let me go over to this real fast, make it bigger. Okay, so you guys can see here, the blue lines, every blue line is a logistics line into, let me make sure you guys can see this okay. Yeah, you guys can see it okay. All right, so the blue lines are all the possible logistics lines on roads that are at least packed dirt. So not necessarily paved roads, but they're not going to be disrupted heavily by weather conditions. So if it rains, you're still going to be able to drive on these hard packed roads. So we can see here that there are some from the north from Seledove, but here's that advance into that mine, which then cuts that. So supply from the north is impossible. Also supply through to Strukrin. I don't know how to even pronounce that, so I'm sorry, guys. Has been cut just by proximity to the front line. You know, the Ukrainians cannot run logistics into Kharkiv from the north now. And from the south, we can see here that Kharkov, which is supposed to be a pretty major logistics hub, is actually ill-positioned sort of on this Vovocha River reservoir right here. And it is connected by a series of bridges. There's a bridge here, a bridge here, and a bridge here. All three of these bridges have been destroyed by Russian missile or glide bomb strikes. So the options available for the Ukrainians are to come all the way from the west, basically. This is the only way of approach. They can come around behind Kharkov or down from the north from Seledove area, Pokrovsk area. They can come through here, run along the reservoir from the backside, come up through here, and then they could potentially come down through this road, through this industrial area into Horivka, or more likely they will come up here through Novoselidivka and then into Hrinki that way. So you can see how just through these two advances here and this advance up here to the north, how the logistics situation has instantly become much, much more difficult for the Ukrainians in this total pocket. And once again, now we have the Ukrainian armed forces doing what they love to do, which is not retreating in time, sitting in pockets, forcing a lot more casualties on themselves than are really necessary, just to extend the fight 1 or 2 more weeks in this area. So, yeah, it is not exactly, if you're a Ukraine fan, not exactly what you want to see. Another pocket. The Ukrainians are now sitting in this pocket, obviously, as well as what will soon become a pocket up here. So it always appears to me now, at least, that the Ukrainians are constantly sitting in 2 pockets at any given time. And if they're not, then they force themselves into a new pocket somehow. It's rather impressive. I don't know how they always manage to do it, but they are currently sitting in a tactical encirclement down here in Ugledar, as well as a near encirclement here in the Hrinki Vavocha River region pocket. So, yeah, those are my updates for today. Something else, I don't know if I actually talked about this, but on Google Earth now, you can go and see the actual reservoir where the Dnieper River used to be. Updated imagery. However, if you zoom in, it goes away. But if you zoom in even more, you can kind of see what the ground sort of looks like here. It's just kind of like swampy, marshy, rivers running through it. Probably not a lot to actually go walk out on, even though from up here it looks more dry. But this could open up a new sort of situation for the Ukrainians or the Russians moving into these different regions. Obviously, if you're looking down here, crossing up here now is a lot easier. The Ukrainians have potentially, depending on who you think blew the Novokharhovka Dam, I believe the Ukrainians did it to aid their counteroffensive. They started their counteroffensive the second they blew it. I do believe that this now probably hurts the Ukrainian position, because the Dnieper River is supposed to be a massive block for anybody, whether you're on the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. Especially down here, you can see, it's hard to do cross-river operations, but you have greatly reduced the amount of river here now. It's not this massive reservoir region. Like if you zoom out, or I'm sorry, if you zoom in, you can see that this was impassable for any side. Running logistics across this is impossible. Now, not so much. So the tactically and strategically, this area of the front has changed significantly. All right. If you guys have questions, go ahead and get questions in. We don't have a ton of updates. I have one thing I want to talk about with Ukraine, and then maybe we'll talk about Israel and Hezbollah. But other than that, not a ton to talk about today. So the only article I have for you today is this one. With a $39 billion loan for Ukraine, Europe moves ahead without the United States. So the U.S. has not been able to approve financial backing for Ukraine with Russian assets. Europe has gone ahead and moved ahead with their plan to at least leverage Russian assets to get this money to Ukraine. Very bad idea. It's going to come back to bite Europe tremendously, but they are out of options. And as I've been saying this entire time, Europe is going to be left holding the bag for the Ukraine project. This is how vassal states of the United States work. If you're a vassal, you're not thrown away like garbage like Ukraine. Ukraine is a proxy, right? But Europe is important still. There's still important aspects of Europe. Europe is a market that the United States wants to hold on to. But they don't give a rat's ass about Ukraine. They don't care what happens to Ukraine. Ukraine is a means to an end, and that end isn't being reached. So they're going to continue milking Ukraine for all it's worth. And then as soon as it's not worth anything to them, they're going to drop it. But Europe can't do that. Europe is on the hook for the Ukraine project. right? They should have known this from the start. They should have seen this from the start. There's no way that some 26-year-old dumb kid in the United States should be able to look at this with my limited geopolitical experience, just based off the time I've been on the earth, and say the US is definitely not Ukraine's ally. And Europe, you have to understand that every single proxy that the US has had for the last 60 years has not turned out very well at the end of the day. But Ukraine is a part of Europe. You're trying to bring Ukraine into the EU and into NATO. So you can't give up on them, right? You've already overinvested. If you give up on them, there is a tremendous possibility of a massive refugee flow from Ukraine into Europe, which the Europeans don't want. That's going to be a massive drain on the economy. It's going to be a really bad look for Poland. I mean, how can Poland say no? But also, how could Poland say yes? So the Ukraine project collapsing is going to have real effects and real consequences on the European Union. So they have to go forward with this. But utilizing Russian assets for this is a very, 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 very bad idea. It basically means that anybody who has invested any money in your country at any given time, if they go against what you deem to be morally correct, politically sound, whatever, they can just freeze your assets and steal them and use them however they wish. I'm not going to let my money sit in these countries anymore. I'm not going to use their banks. I'm not going to invest with them because of the existential risk to my nation if I do anything slightly against the narrative, right? And Hungary is going against the narrative as well with this. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. The European Union's top officials said on a trip to Kiev on Friday that Europe would offer Ukraine a loan of $35 billion. By the way, a loan. What economy is going to pay that back? Even after the war, what economy? Of the 35 billion euros, about 39 billion backed by frozen Russian assets. So not actually Russian assets, just backed by frozen Russian assets, which means that they're leveraging them. European leaders said the loan would move forward initially without contributions from the United States after talks between America and European officials stalled in recent days because the U.S. is done. The U.S. is heading into an election. Kamala is not obsessed with the Ukraine project the same way the Biden administration will be. They're not going to shift a whole lot, but there's not this obsession. There's not this need to win in Ukraine for Kamala, I don't think. And then Trump is just a complete nightmare story for Ukraine, in my personal opinion. So, we have an election coming up. People are trying to win elections. Giving a bunch of money to Ukraine right now is a very, very, very bad look for both administrations. And freezing Russian assets, if you're going to do it that way in the United States to give that to Ukraine, is a horrible thing to do right before an election. An absolute nightmare thing to do right before you go into an election. So, the U.S. said, we're not doing that. The official Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, met with President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine to reiterate Europe's continued support for his country because they don't have a choice, right? They have to continue giving their support, even though they don't want to, because they don't have a choice. Maybe Ursula von der Leyen does because her whole career is riding on the Ukraine project now, but her trip came days before Mr. Zelensky was expected to travel to New York for the United States General Assembly. There he will present Biden with a proposal, which has not yet been made public, to bring about the end of Russia's war in Ukraine. He will also meet with the two candidates seeking to replace Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. So going and doing the whole theater act, going to take a map with targets that they want to strike in Ukraine and say, hey, we need to use these weapons, and hey, we need more weapons, and hey, we need more planes, and hey, we need more air defense, and hey, we need more this and that. All the while, the U.S. is staring down a rapidly escalating situation in the Middle East. They're looking towards, combating China here. For China, this is a blessing. This whole thing is a blessing The Middle East, if I was China, I would be trying to get that war in the Middle East to go for as long as possible, keep the U.S. distracted in the Middle East, keep supporting Russia, keep the U.S. distracted in Europe. How are they even going to have time to pay attention to the South China Sea and Taiwan? You're not. So this is a gift to China. And again, you can see how U.S. foreign policy is misdirected, ill-guided, and doesn't have a plan in front of it to go forward. They don't have a plan. They're just reacting at this point, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. They don't have, a pathway forward for them to say win in Ukraine. There is no pathway forward. All they're trying to do is sustain Ukraine for as long as possible until it dies. That's their Ukraine plan. That's not a plan. All of their plans on Ukraine have failed. Their plan in the Middle East seems to be we kind of can't control Israel. Israel's doing whatever they want. We don't want a regional war in the Middle East. But in this election year, both candidates can't say no to the Israeli lobby, AIPAC, because that's going to hurt both of their chances of getting elected. And Donald Trump has constituents. His constituency is mostly pro-Israel, as is. And Kamala can't lose. Kamala's struggling because she can't go against Israel because of AIPAC and all that. But then also her base is really not happy with the way Israel is behaving. So it is a perfect storm, a nightmare scenario for everybody, and really quite dangerous. There's just so much chaos and so many decisions being made without proper communication lines, I would say, being open between Israel and the United States, Ukraine and the United States, United States and Europe. It's like there's this. It's like everybody's fighting their own battles, right? There's no alliance. Everybody's fighting their own individual battles within the alliance, and it just happens to kind of be headed in the same direction as each other. They all are going in the same direction, but they don't have a unified objective, a unified goal outside of, regime change in Russia or, whatever, stability in the Middle East. I don't know. But so that's sort of the situation we're looking at. Not good for Europe, not particularly bad for the United States, but the United States is being stretched thin right now, overloaded and pulled in a lot of different directions. So thanks, Scott. Your input on Lebanon, Israel would be much appreciated. Thanks again. Much appreciated. Appreciate you, man. Putin, do you think this man has any sense of pride and dignity? Does this guy ever feel disrespected? Like I've said multiple times, the whole embarrassment, disrespect, those are all emotional responses to any given stimuli. So if you're going to allow emotional response to dictate how you fight a war and how you go about your geostrategic plans, you're going to fail, or you're going to maybe succeed, but it won't be in the clinical way that you should succeed. I'm not saying you can't win through emotional responses, but there's always reactions and there's always consequences for every movement. So yes, I'm sure he does feel disrespect, humiliated, and embarrassed. Does he allow that to affect his decision-making when it comes to Ukraine? No. All right, moving into Israel. So after the recent pager attack, we saw a second wave of detonated explosions within electronic devices. These were shortwave radios. This attack was much, much less effective than the first one. I'm pretty sure everybody was scared shitless that their electronics were going to explode. And people weren't carrying the radios on them the same way that everybody was carrying the pagers. But the radio blasts were a little bit bigger. A lot of apartments caught on fire and stuff like that. So what this appears to me is a use it or lose it sort of situation. There are a couple of instances, or a couple of possible situations when it comes to this. First, this could just have been Israel's plan, right? You don't want to go into southern Lebanon. That's a nightmare. I've been telling you guys for months, Israel does not want to go into southern Lebanon. They want a wider war, but they do not want to go get bogged down in Lebanon. It is a losing formula for Israel. You have seen how it hasn't succeeded in Gaza. they're going to try to do the same thing in southern Lebanon if they go in, and it's going to go the exact same way, except Lebanon isn't isolated in an open air prison like Hamas in Gaza. It is can be supplied through Syria by Iran. They have means to continue the fighting for a very long time. Israel does not want to go into southern Lebanon. So part of it, this could be a means to get a ceasefire with Hezbollah, get a deal. You escalate, you show your willingness to escalate, you assassinate some senior Hezbollah leaders like we saw today in a strike in Beirut. You bring all of your forces to the border, and then you go ahead and detonate all of these communication devices, really strike fear into Hezbollah, get them to come to the table, solve the northern issue, get Israelis to return to the north without actually engaging in a war. After Nasrallah, I don't know how to say his name actually. I've never actually heard it out loud. The leader of Hezbollah gave a speech. He came out and said basically that no negotiations are ever going to happen now. This has crossed every red line. There will be a response. Basically, the region is going into war. So whether the Israelis had actually planned for a ceasefire negotiation or whether this was the start of an operation, I don't know. Unfortunately for the Israelis, they used their what looks like one of their ace up their sleeves in this pager and shortwave radio attack early. There were some reports that Hezbollah was starting to get suspicious of some of the communication devices. Maybe they had found something. I'm not sure. Either way, the decision was made to implement this hidden explosive, sort of like a Pearl Harbor kind of, right? And initiating an attack. Take, element of surprise, cutting off communications, injuring thousands, overloading hospitals, and then you invade immediately on the back of that. That didn't happen, which makes me think that this was rooted out and they just were in a use it or lose it situation. They detonated what they had and they got, they just used it because if not, all of those pagers would have been thrown out and they would have just been exploding in dumps or whatever. So unfortunate for the Israelis. It was a very high level intelligence operation. They got these pagers and shortwave radios with plastic explosives in. Cynical, maniacal, maybe evil, you could say. Kids were killed, civilians were injured. These things were going off at funerals. These things were going off at grocery stores, just not precise at all. While a good number of them were likely Hezbollah fighters, it still is a completely ridiculous thing to do, to press that button. That is inhumane at such a high level. But I mean, if we look at Gaza, that's not really an issue in this conflict, it doesn't seem. So yeah, that's the situation we're looking at in the Middle East. I fully expect that we will see a larger regional war here very soon between Israel and Hezbollah. But right now, Israel it has the initiative. Israel is choosing where and when things take place. And it looks like Hezbollah is getting caught with its hands under its butt. So, that's what we're looking at. We'll see how things develop. All Hezbollah has to do is launch enough ballistic missiles to basically make civilian life in Israel impossible. That's all they have to do. Just strike infrastructure. And that's going to decimate the Israeli economy. You can fight a war in southern Lebanon as long as you want to. And as long as, Israelis don't have power, water, they won't have an economy and they'll have to leave the country. They've already left the north. So think about if you make the middle of the country uninhabitable and the war in the south in Gaza. I mean, there's just Israel's not a big enough place, and they know it, and they don't want to go into southern Lebanon. So they're going to continue trying to scare, but I don't think Hezbollah is going to fall for that. I've seen some claims and pictures of Iranian-made pagers and radios. They're allegedly being shipped to Syria and then Lebanon. Any info on that? No, and I don't really think this matters. I think that, again, you've already seen they've already played the card. So now every single Hezbollah shipment is going to have, Israel just created a whole new line of work in the Hezbollah department, just opening up radios in these shipments and looking to see if they have plastic explosives or whatever in them is going to be a normal thing now. And also, this just hurt the electronics market in the West so significantly that I almost think that some of these electronics companies could probably file a lawsuit against Israel because they inappropriately opened a company's electronic devices that were being shipped, placed explosives in them, and then sent them on. And now nobody's going to order electronics from the West. Everything's going to come from China. Everything is going to come from China now. So they've done actual significant damage to the Western electronics market in like the Middle East and Africa. Yep. They're going to get a huge boost in sales from this. All right, guys, that's all I had today. So if you have some questions, go ahead and get some questions in. I'm done. Questions? Anybody? No questions today? Wasn't everything China before? No, these pagers and these shortwave radios, I think, came through like some shell company in Bulgaria. Oh, one other thing. Apparently, the Georgian Legion is now in the midst of some scam accusations. NAFO has turned on the Georgian Legion. Isn't that funny? Everybody who seems to hate me turns out to be some grifting piece of shit. Like every single group of people that end up coming after me and hating me, specifically the Georgian Legion has come after me multiple times. At least their social media has. And would you look at that? They're a bunch of lying garbage human beings that are just stealing from Ukraine or stealing from idiots who think they're giving to Ukraine. Crazy, crazy, huh? Crazy, crazy. It's only going to get more crazy, everybody. And don't worry, I'll be here reporting it all, covering it all, just for you. Any info on the mini AFU that are currently in current encircled pockets? Just those two that I talked about. There are none that are currently encircled, but we have this pocket, which is developing rather quickly. It is already very difficult for the Ukrainians in here, I imagine. And then as well up in the Kursk region, you can see that this northern region is now cut off from its road access. So the Ukrainians here are technically trapped. They can still get out through fields, but that's much harder. And then down here in Ugledar, the Ukrainians are in a tactical encirclement. The only way you can reach this is basically through dirt roads in the fields. So no actual paved roads to Ugledar. I'm expecting Ugledar to fall sometime soon. I don't know if they sent a bunch of guys in here trying to stabilize the situation or what happened, but the Russians were moving very quick through here, and then it kind of slowed down. I don't know if it's just a lack of reporting from the region or what's going on, but I do expect this to fall very soon. The pressure here is immense for the Ukrainians. Nasrallah? I don't know, dude. I haven't been around these names my entire life, so seeing them and reading them is like, Isn't Kursk a big gray zone? Yeah, you could say that. It's thinly populated by either side's military. Would you prefer for RU to counter in Kursk into Sumy or let Ukraine send everything in for the meat grinder? Honestly, I think that whether the Russians push into the Sumy region or whether they stay in the Kursk region, it doesn't really make much of a difference. It's going to be a grinder for the Ukrainians either way. Basically, anywhere where the Russians decide to push has become a grinder for the Ukrainians in one way or another. We saw it in Kharkov. We saw it in Pokrovsk. We're seeing it around Ugledar. It's just a continued thing. Nasrallah. Sounds like it's like Shangri-La to me. That's how that reads every single time. Do you think the declining U.S. economy will force them to accept a multipolar world and get rid of their unhinged foreign policy? When you say the U.S., I mean, what you're saying, yes, eventually, maybe. I'm never going to say no to anything in the future, but it won't be the change. It won't be the U.S. accepting it. It's going to be a change, a regime change. The entire elite class is going to have to kind of take a role after we lose hegemony, they won't be able to stay in their positions. Like politically, they'll be. I mean, if there is a major collapse in the economy or something, we will see changes at the highest levels. At least the visual, that what we can see changing will change, and that might force us into a more multipolar acceptance. But I really don't think the U.S. has any desire to let go of its hegemony. So I think it's going to be a fight the whole way down. Why do you debase Ukrainian culture, values, and army purposes? Wait. Okay, well, first off, I don't debase Ukrainian culture. I think that there are parts of Ukrainian culture that are not good, but there are also parts that are fine. So I have no issue with Ukrainian culture. I actually am in favor of, maintaining Ukrainian culture. Some people would say, what even is Ukraine? If you want to say what is Ukrainian culture, that there's a question there. That's because there are multiple. I mean, half of Ukraine is Russian speaking and has more of a Russian culture than a Ukrainian identity. So, or a Russian identity more than a Ukrainian identity. So I don't really debase Ukrainian values. I think it's a very murky topic, though. And then their army. I think their army's fighting very well for what they have. They're just in a bad situation and they don't have the options available to succeed. So it's not, I don't think I'm really debasing anything. I'm being honest, and you might not like my honesty. Is Kursk progressing faster than expected? I feel total air superiority has allowed Russia to maneuver faster than expected. I don't know if it's faster necessarily, because it is just a lot of empty space, and if the Ukrainians are weak, the Russians will move fast. But yes, your point to the air dominance, air superiority, we are actually seeing large Russian strike drones operating in the Kursk region, striking tanks and stuff like that. So yes, Ukrainian air defense is completely degraded in this region. Even over the Sumy region, we see drones operating. So that frontline air defense is just non-existent at all. And it has severely increased the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces. I just had something like fly in front of my face. Yeah, I don't know if it's faster than expected, but because I'm not expecting anything right now, and I think this is something that you guys should understand. What you saw in 2023, you cannot expect that same thing now. This is a completely different battle now that we're seeing than a year ago, 6 months ago, even. It's a completely different battle. The lines have shifted. The force disposition has changed. The firepower availability has changed. So saying expected, I mean, I guess we all can expect certain things, but I wouldn't really expect something to move a certain pace at all anymore. Things are going to slow down sometimes to a crawl, and then sometimes you're going to see these massive breakthroughs in areas. So yeah, I wouldn't be overly I wouldn't be doing a lot of predictions right now in terms of giving specific times. What do you think is the policy of Washington's Walrus Bolton? Any news from Washington on the Israel-Lebanon beef? Well, Bolton is always doing Bolton things, so his policy is going to be the same as his policy has always been. I haven't actually heard anything specifically from him for about a week, I think. Last thing I think I heard was him talking about supporting Israel to the end, sort of deal. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me. And then it appears to me that Israel is sort of just unleashed. There doesn't seem to be any ability for Washington to coerce Netanyahu. He seems to be just, in my opinion, a rabid dog doing everything he can to stay out of prison. And the way he does that is by maintaining martial law and staying in conflicts. I think he really does believe that this is Israel's chance to establish themselves in the greater Israel area, sort of, and potentially destroy Iran. And if he doesn't do that, he's going to end up in prison, and who knows what comes of Israel. So it doesn't appear that Washington has any say in what Israel does. They're just going to keep going along with everything and keep funding and providing weapons. Maybe they do have a say and it's all choreographed. I'm not sure. But it appears that Washington is still more concerned about Ukraine than Israel. So thank you for your question. I noticed you have a pic of a German Shepherd on your main X account and a Great Dane on your mapping account. So I was wondering if you own any dogs and what breeds are they? Atlas, come here. Atlas, come here. Come here. Come here. He's laying down. Come here, buddy. Come here. So this is my one dog. This is Atlas. He's an American Bulldog. He's very cute. Oh! Come here, Sam. Come here, Sammy. Sammy! And this is Sammy. She's a little German Shepherd Husky mix, and she is very loud. She is my girlfriend's dog. She is the baby. And then I have a Great Dane downstairs. He likes to hang out downstairs on the couch, so got dog hair on me now. One of the things about having pets, yes, I do. The Great Dane that's on my YouTube profile thing, he is my that is my dog, and so is the American Bulldog. But the Great Dane is my my mascot for this show. So yeah. Let's see. My dog was like, "What the hell are you doing, bro?" Any consequences for Mongolia ignoring the ICC? Next question. No, there will be no consequences for ignoring a fake court. The highest fake court in all of the fantasy lands. Thoughts on Israel's casualties since October 7th? Unsustainable for Israel. Not horrific for the operation, but in terms of what Israel can sustain, it's untenable, and Lebanon is going to be so much worse. Israel doesn't have a huge population. They don't have this massive military. Like, every loss is felt greatly, even in the economy. And this extended war pulling men away from the economy for so long has had cascading effects. Is that the mascot? Yes. Well, no, not the ones I showed. The mascot's downstairs. I'll have him up on the next live stream, and I'll let him say hi to you guys. Yes, Atlas is a good boy. He is the goodest boy. He's 8 now. BB be like, look at me, I'm the captain now. Yeah, he is. Seriously. It does seem like he's just doing whatever he wants. I don't remember if you commented about the new decree from Putin about military personnel increase. Will it affect the SMO? Yeah. I mean, the fact that the Russian military is growing in size and becoming stronger means that they're going to have more resources to allocate to different areas all the time. So yes, any increase in personnel is going to have an effect on Ukraine for sure. Any war that the Russians are in. Isn't Israel doing the 40K Space Marine Gen Seed thingy, literally pulling? Yeah, they actually are. That's crazy. I forgot about that. Yeah, there was a couple articles about them doing that. Yeah, because that's literally the situation in the country. Ukraine should honestly be doing the same things. Do you think Israel controls America or vice versa? No, I don't think Israel controls America. I think Israel is completely and fully kept alive and kept in place by the United States and our protection via our foreign policy. No, I do not think Israel has any say. I think that Israel might have some blackmail on politicians. The whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, I think, was like sort of an intelligence operation like Mossad. But I think every intelligence agency does honeypots and stuff like that. So I don't really think that is I'm sure there's aspects of it. AIPAC is a big lobby, right? They are a strong lobby. So in an election year, it's going to be difficult to go against a lobby that can decide an election. And I'm not saying it's the strongest lobby. The military industrial complex is way stronger than AIPAC. Big Pharma is way stronger than AIPAC. But It's still there, and it still matters, especially in a tight election like this one could be. No, this is sort of a tail wagging the dog sort of thing. We like Israel. Israel is good for the United States geostrategically. If Israel goes away, the United States loses its forward operating base in the Middle East, where it has complete, free roam. They can do anything they want in Israel. They own Israel. Israel is the 51st state of the United States of America. That's what Israel is. And we use it as a foreign or a forward operating base in the Middle East. And that's why they're allowed to do whatever they need to do, is because the United States wants Israel to be there and be strong and be safe. Because if Israel is secured, our forward operating base in the region is secured, and we have a reason and an excuse to send aircraft carriers there whenever we want. We can hang out there. We can move military equipment in there whenever we want. And we don't have any of those agreements with any other countries in the Middle East. Only Israel. So Israel is more important to the United States than they're both important to each other. But I'm saying Israel is so important to the United States. And Israel cannot live without the United States. So no, I do not think Israel is in control of the United States or our foreign policy. That's like saying Ukraine is in charge of our foreign policy. They're not. We just want to use Ukraine, right? It's the same thing. Who owns the MIC and Big Pharma? Multiple different people, multiple different companies. What do you think of Israel's nuclear arsenal? It exists. I don't know. It's like 100 nukes or something like that at the most. Brian, Berletic's take on Israel is interesting. Essentially, deep state using Israel to control the government, as well as, you say, a military base in the Middle East. Yeah. I mean, if you think that there is a deep state too, they're controlling all of it, right? They control Israel, they control Ukraine, they control the United States, whatever. So for sure, the deep state is interested in controlling Ukraine. And Brian is a little bit even further than I am, where he thinks that everything Israel does is basically condoned by the United States. And not condoned in a silent sort of way, like we don't like it, but we're not going to say anything about it. Like the U.S. is telling Israel to do some of these things because it's furthering U.S. foreign policy in the region, which I can fully see. I don't necessarily know if I believe that 100%, but I can definitely see it. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming in and watching today. Be on the lookout for that update video, even though you just watched the update. Please just check it out and give it a look and see if you guys like it. If you have any critiques or comments, let me know. If the Israel-Lebanon situation does kick off, I will be starting a separate series covering that. But all of it will be covered in my live streams as well. So if you're looking for all of that information in one place, come check out the live stream. Please, everybody, take care, be safe, and do something good for your family or a stranger or something this weekend. Make somebody's life better because of what you did. All right. Bye, dorks.